There are a lot of new people who recently subscribed to my channel. Welcome! This week's video is going to be a little different. I'm still going to make a hyper-realistic cake, but I'm also going to talk a little bit about myself and let you guys know how I got into making cakes, because it isn't exactly a common profession. My name is Natalie Sideserf, and I make cakes that do not look like cakes. And I'm gonna show you how I made a broccoli cake. I'm gonna give you guys a little Natalie Sideserf history lesson today. And I'm gonna explain how I got into this incredibly strange profession of making hyper-realistic cakes. So sit back, relax, and let me tell you my story. I've been making art since I was a kid. Through high school, I have a bachelor's degree in fine art, and my concentration was painting, and I've always focused on realism. So way back in 2011, shortly after I graduated, I started sculpting with cake. And since I had that art background, I immediately treated cake and sugar and chocolate just as I would any other traditional art medium. So even from the very beginning of my cake making career, the types of things that I chose to sculpt in cake fit into two very common types of art: the portrait and the still life. One of my very first sculpted cakes was a portrait of singer Willie Nelson. I figured I had sculpted portraits out of clay, so why not cake? This was back in February 2013, and at the time, it was extremely hard to find any information on how to make sculpted cakes. And examples of realism in cake sculpture was even more rare. I couldn't find any courses or even examples of realistic portrait cakes. So what did I do? I dove in, and I experimented. And I figured out how to make a realistic portrait cake myself. So after a lot of trial and error making that cake, I finished it and I sent a picture of it to my brother. My brother posted it on Reddit, and crazy enough, my Willie Nelson cake reached the #1 submission on the front page. I think the reason that cake blew up like it did was that no one had seen anything quite like it at the time. It was a realistic human cake with a slice taken out of its forehead. And it was definitely odd, and it's still odd today. After making the Willie Nelson cake and it getting so much attention and being featured on major media outlets and blogs, I realized that I was onto something. So treating cake as an art was interesting to people. So I started my business, Sideserf Cake Studio, and started making portrait cakes and still life cakes. Check out this mug. This is a Sideserf Cake Studio mug. You can get one too at shop.sideserfcakes.com. And if you're left-handed, just images on both sides and get your own. Now enough about the portraits. Let's talk about the other type of cake that I make, the still life cake, which brings us to this cake that I'm working on right here. A still life is a work of art that depicts inanimate objects. Typically things like food or books, vases, flowers, pretty much whatever's in the room. And still life artwork has been around since the Middle Ages. It's been a long time. So along with portrait cakes, I've been making still life cakes for the past decade. And early on, very few people wanted to purchase my still life cakes. They said that they were too weird, and they asked me, who would ever want to eat that? They were a hard sell, to say the least. So rather than give up on my passion for making these hyper-realistic cakes, I recognized that people online really enjoyed them. So I went all in. 5 years ago, I set a goal to make at least one new hyper-realistic cake every week, with the hopes of building up their popularity enough to make a living by sharing them online and showing people how I make them. Now my cakes are seen by millions of people daily, and I get to work with some really amazing people and companies, and best of all, I now make a living doing what I love. And the best part is that a lot of people really enjoy them. Like, most people find my cakes to be both strange and fun, and I agree, they are both of those things. I am incredibly grateful that I get to make these cool cakes for a living. And that's thanks to you guys. You support me by following my accounts, watching my videos, wearing my merch. You share my cakes with your friends and family, and subscribing to this channel. It's all a huge help, and I appreciate it more than you know. long ago, cakes weren't seen as an art medium. But over the years, they've grown to become more respected as an art. And I think that my cakes played a part in that, which I think is fantastic. Very proud. So let me know in the comments how you feel about my cakes. Let me know, do you love them? Do you hate them? I am interested to hear what you think. Now that you know a little more about my background, let's talk about this cake I'm working on. One of my favorite things about this cake is that I'm mixing different shades of green buttercream, and I'll use that as the paint. Modeling chocolate is my clay, and buttercream is my paint. There's an edible version for every medium. The texture of the canvas is so subtle, but I absolutely love it. And as I add the white, it's like I'm actually priming a real canvas to be painted. I don't want the broccoli painting to be realistic. I want it to read as a quick painting. So I'm spreading the buttercream on nice and thick so that there's a lot of texture. I'm even using my offset spatula similar to how I'd use a palette knife. And I'm layering up color, I'm creating shadows and highlights, all with buttercream. And there you have it, a cake of a still life painting of a still life broccoli cake. I was just hanging out with a friend of mine who is an artist, and clearly he has influenced me this week because I've got art on the brain. Subscribe to this channel and like this video if you like it because it helps me out big time.